In the 80s, animation for US TV programming had grown formulaic, often based on characters from other known media like comic books and you know and books like Dr. Seuss books and whatever, and so much of the actual animation being outsourced to cheap Asian laborers. Plus, several popular animated TV series for children could be perceived as little more than just commercials, as they were based on actual, famous toy lines, including Mattel's He-Man, He-Man and Masters of the Universe, Hasbro's G.I. Joe, the Transformers, and My Little Pony. Not that far from today, really. One of the biggest TV hits was The Smurfs, which originally aired from 1981 to 1989. And I have to mention one of my all-time favorite filmmakers, Miyazaki. Hayao Miyazaki's films, like Nausicaa, The Valley of the Wind, came out in 1984. Castle in the Sky, which is based on his own Magna comic, which came out in 1986, which obviously has been very, very well received both audience-wise and critics-wise, and actually is actually considered one of the greatest animated films of all time. Castle in the Sky was the very first feature for a new studio that he set up with his partner Isao Takahata, and that studio is called Studio Ghibli. Studio Ghibli continued its success with Takahata's World War II film Grave of the Fireflies and Miyazaki's iconic My Neighbor Totoro and Kiki's Delivery Service, which both I love, those last two especially. And as of a couple weeks ago, I believe the entire Studio Ghibli catalog is now available on Netflix. So I urge you to watch this. Don Bluth, who had left Disney in 1979, together with 9 other animators, started to compete with his former employer in cinemas with his 1982 film, The Secret of NIMH. And this became an ongoing thing where a lot of people who were classically trained at Disney were going off and doing things with other studios. That film got a lot of attention and was a moderate success. And later he collaborated with Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment to create An American Tail, which came out in 1986 and became the highest grossing non-Disney animated film at that time. Land Before Time, which came out in 1988, was equally popular and successful. Another person who was at Disney for a time and eventually, he actually got Disney behind him was Tim Burton. He shot he made his very first short film that really broke through, which is called Frankenweenie. You can imagine what this is about. It came out in 1984. In 1985, he made his very first feature film called Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And then in 1988, he made Beetlejuice, with some incredible stop-motion animation by his fellow Disney colleague, Henry Selick. First of all, did you know they're making Beetlejuice Part 2? Henry Selick is the person who directed A Nightmare Before Christmas, Coraline, and James and the Giant Peach, and often doesn't get enough credit, I think, that for a lot of those films than he actually deserves. In cinemas, at the same time, Robert Zemeckis' live-action animated hit, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, came out in 1988 and was a great mashup, much like what Space Jam was going to be years later, with cartoon characters and live action. Who Framed Roger Rabbit had the quality and zany comedy of the golden age of cartoons, with some cameos of some very famous superstars of that era, including Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Goofy, Betty Boop, Droopy, Woody Woodpecker, and the Mel Blanc voiced Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, Tweety, and Sylvester. Then The Simpsons. Matt Groening's The Simpsons started in April of 1987 as a short segment in a sketch comedy show called The Tracy Ullman Show, and got their own primetime half-hour sitcom in December of '89. It became one of the biggest cartoon hits in history and is the longest-running American scripted primetime television series still. Matt Groening used to have his comics in the paper, and I grew up in LA, so it was in the LA Weekly, and it was called A Life in Hell. Not Simpsons related, but just to kind of give you a little, before he was doing animation, he was just doing comics. Look that up if you get a chance. But I want to show you the very first version of The Simpsons that aired on the Tracy Ullman Show. Watch this.